back, everybody. Welcome back. A while ago, I was reading this book. It's called Evil, an Investigation. And it's a fascinating study of, well, guess what? It's a study of evil. And Lance Morrow, who wrote this book, was on the show, and we talked a little bit. And I really enjoyed talking to him. And we didn't really have enough time, and I thought, well, what could be more appropriate to invite him back on September the 11th, and we could talk some more about evil. So please welcome back Lance Morrow, everybody. Lance Morrow. Welcome back, Lance. How are you?
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
And I was reading your book about evil, and I thought, well, you know, it's always I find it very difficult to do a show on September the 11th. That's why my sister is on, is why I find it very difficult to, because I'm kind of embarrassed by it.
I got myself into a very solemn frame of mind about everything, and then I listened to your sister and you.
Yeah, I know,
so
but that's...
I'm now going to have to
it's not
organized.
Well, is it inappropriate to
No, I mean, it's a fascinating subject to me, although... I write about other things too.
No, I know. Do you write about comedy? You do write a little bit about comedy in this. You talk about humor.
Evil and humor. Yeah.
It's interesting. What kind of evil humor connection is there then?
Well, no, I was interested. I have a chapter in there. I'm trying to remember. But
well,
I was making.
Why
don't you just read it for me? No, but there are interesting parallels between evil and humor, the unpredictability of it, and so on. There are a lot of... I was just kind of drawing out that line for a while.
It's very interesting. With this was written post 9/11, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And didn't you write an essay for Time magazine the day after?
Yeah. No, I wrote it an hour after the second tower went down, and I've never been more enraged in my life. I mean, I was just... we put out a special issue that night.
Right.
And so I had to write it very, very fast.
Have you read the article since?
Yeah, not in the last couple of years, but yeah, I have read it since.
Is it something that you would subscribe to now? I mean,
probably, yeah. But I'd have to kind of... It's. I mean, people who read it thought it was half psychotic, but it was because it was very angry.
You were making the case for rage and retribution.
Well,
right?
that was the headline, and it made it sound even more inflamed than it was. But it was very enraged. I mean, I would be more moderate now in discussing it, but basically, I think I could defend.
Listen, you don't need to defend it with me. I'm good. It's fine. Yeah, no. The case for rage and retribution is burns bright with me. Yeah. What about these fellows who did this on this day? Would they count themselves? This is clearly an evil act.
Yeah, it was clearly an evil act, and it's funny. Today I was watching the services a bit, and they were quite moving. But the thing is that over a period of time, I found that my mind had developed calluses about this because, number one, I had seen those images so many thousands of times that I think emotionally you just develop a kind of callus, and also you've seen people exploit it politically and so on, and so you get kind of used to it and you move away from it. But I found myself brought back today and thinking about it in a fresh way, and I was thinking about Muhammad Atta and his people and what they were doing in the premeditation of it.
You're right.
And they were premeditating their own destruction and the destruction of the passengers on the planes and the towers, and of course, in contrast to that, you had the acts of courage and heroism and so on of the people. As spontaneous. It was not premeditated, but entirely spontaneous. What those hijackers thought they were doing something self-sacrificing, noble, a martyr's death, and so on. So in their universe, what they were doing was good. In our universe, what they were doing was incredibly evil. And it's an interesting way to try.
Is it that? Can people be that deluded to think that, you know? I mean, there are children on the. You know, I don't want to get too graphic about this, but thousands of innocent people die, and that's okay. That's all right. That you.
Well, do you remember a movie called The Battle of Algiers about Pontecorvo. It's a pseudo-documentary about the efforts of the Algerians to throw the French out of Algeria. I'm not saying there's any equivalence in the the geopolitical situation. So I'm simply in the middle of that. You have 3 Algerian women who can pass as French, and when they're dressed up in European clothes, they go out. Each has a bomb in her straw basket, and one of the women goes into an ice cream bar. They go over into the French section of the city, and they go into an ice cream bar, and then you see a little boy licking an ice cream cone, and presently, kaboom! And so it's an act of pure terrorism and so on. Up to that point in the movie, your sympathies are entirely with, or not entirely, but you see the Algerians in the effort to throw out these French colonials and so on. Then she does this thing, and then it's a very complicated movie morally speaking, but it seems to me that always in these calculations, evil is such a difficult thing to make calculations about, and you have to bear in mind that some people think what they're doing makes entirely complete sense, moral sense in their universe.
What about the case for some kind of mental health for people left behind? How do you? If you are related or a loved one of yours was taken down on September the 11th, clearly you have to be around. There's a grieving process, there's rage, and there's anger. What if someone is hit by an immense amount of evil, and I would say this was a completely reprehensible evil act.
Absolutely.
Then how do you survive mentally from that? How do you survive from evil being inflicted on you or someone you love?
I don't know. It's terribly traumatic, and it's the medical psychiatric term is post-traumatic stress disorder, and it must be. God knows what it must be like for
so the
those
act
people.
continues to be evil after the initial act. The
That's
evil
the whole point of it. What's the point of terrorism except to have the act of terror reverberate in the life of that community, in those personal lives and in the life of that community for years? I mean, that's the whole point of terrorism. So that's why they do it. It's not just to wipe out those particular people. It's to have, and you amplify that in a television age. When, Bush said today, he said, there will come a time when people will not have living memories of this day. Well, the fact is that the vast majority of people now thinking about that day don't have a direct living person-to-person. We weren't there. We saw it on television. It was an electronic connection. We saw these images over and over and over again.
Remember it, right?
So those images reverberate in our minds, just as they reverberate a million times more in the minds of the families and so on.
Of course.
So that's the whole point of terror.
To keep it going. Yes, it probably is. I wish we had more time to talk about this. I find the subject abhorrent and fascinating at the same time.
Well, I do too. That's why I wrote this. It's a very interesting and elusive thing, and it's very, very hard to pin down. It always jumps away.
We got to go. Lance Morrow, everybody. We'll be right back.